A lot going on today. The hearings hearings is not even the right word anymore. There's just circus that's going on in Washington, D.C. right now with Brett Kavanaugh. I've got a lot of news about that. And then, of course, we've got this op-ed that was in in the New York Times yesterday. And I wanted to share my opinions on that with you as well. But let me start with Kavanaugh and abortion. And this story may not seem to have anything to do with Kavanaugh, but this is the very essence of it. Texas passed a law, which has been championed by Ken Paxton, their attorney general, passed a law saying that if you are a woman and you have a miscarriage, or you have a stillbirth, or you have an ectopic pregnancy, now this is where the egg and sperm meet and get fertilized, but they don't travel all the way down the fallopian tube into the uterus and implant, but instead they start growing inside the fallopian tube, which can kill a woman. If you have any of those circumstances, or an abortion, if you have any of those circumstances, you must report yourself to the local police department if you fail to hold a burial ceremony and either bury or cremate the fetal tissue. Now, I'm not sure that you must report yourself to the police department is part of this law, but there are penalties for not doing this, which means that the police department may report itself to you. But you get my point. In Texas, Ken Paxton and Greg Abbott and the men running Texas, very much want to make it law in Texas, and it is law in Texas right now, that if you have a miscarriage, you must have a funeral. I believe about 1 in 4 pregnancies ends in a miscarriage. I know very few women who have not had at least one miscarriage in their lives. And to have to compound the tragedy of that with the necessity to basically follow a state law and hold a funeral for a miscarriage, regardless of when the miscarriage happened. Could be, in the 6th week, right? Month and a half into it. To have to do this is bizarre. And this morning, yesterday afternoon rather, a federal judge blocked that law, saying that it's an unnecessary and inappropriate intrusion into the rights of women and, blah-de-blah. But Brett Kavanaugh is on the and part of the judge's rationale was that it basically this infringes on a woman's right to choose based on Roe v. Wade, because also if you have an abortion, Texas wants you to have a funeral, regardless of when the abortion happened. And Brett Kavanaugh has taken the position now that while Roe v. Wade may be settled law, it may be stare decisis, it might be established precedent, that doesn't mean that it can't be overturned. And in fact, he wrote it in a memo when he was in the Bush White House. And this is why it's so important that so much of this stuff comes out. I mean, and it's not coming out. One of the lawyers, this was in 2003 when he was working for George W. Bush. One of the lawyers, and they were prepping, I believe it was Patricia Owens. It was one of Bush's Supreme Court nominees who wanted to go before the Judiciary Committee and say, yeah, Roe v. Wade is settled law. And Brett Kavanaugh pushed back on that. He sent an email and he said, quote, I am not sure that all legal scholars refer to Roe as the settled law of the land at the Supreme Court level, since the court can always overrule its own precedent. And 3 justices on the court would do so right now. Scalia, Roberts, Roberts wasn't on the court at that time. Scalia, Thomas, and I'm not sure who the third is that he's referring to, but, it wasn't Kennedy, but here he is saying that this is what we've got right now. So it's not settled law. We can overturn it. So we shouldn't even call it settled law. This is what Kavanaugh was saying. So if you want to live in a world or in a country where if you have a miscarriage, you must report yourself to the police or certify to the police that, yes, I actually had a funeral or a burial or a cremation for that little blob of bloody tissue. If you want to live in that kind of a country, then, hey, call your senators and tell them that Brett Kavanaugh is your man. The number for the United States Senate is 202-224-3121. Now, to the issue of